Step outside of your comfort zone. See the world with a whole new perspective. Join us and experience the unexplained on the Paranormal View.
And welcome everybody right here to the Paranormal View on the Parax Radio Network. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to be with us tonight. I know that there's a lot of people that's out having parties and fireworking and a whole lot of stuff going to be going on tonight because it's the 4th of July weekend, and I hope everyone has a very happy, great, and safe 4th of July weekend. Have fun, eat a lot, and enjoy listening to the show tonight. We want to thank everybody dropping in the chat room here, and those listening from around the world. We appreciate each and every one of you for taking the time to be with us tonight. If you do have questions tonight, and I'm sure we're probably going to get quite a few, if you want to, you can private chat one to either Ceiling Cat or myself, Henry Foister. And we will get those answered for you. And if you're listening from somewhere else and you want to come over to the chat room, feel free to come to paraxradionetwork.com and click on the chat now button. You'll be in the chat room with all these wonderful people. You'll be able to interact with them and interact with us. And if you're listening from somewhere else, though, and you do have questions, but you don't want to come over to the chat room, you can still get a question answered by sending it to theparanormalview@gmail.com and just put attention question. We will get those answered for you. Great show lined up for tonight. Tonight we have with us Jeffrey Gould. Maybe. Jeffrey already dropped off, did he? We have Barbara Duncan.
He dropped off. Ah, there he is.
I was like, that was quick. You kicked off that fast.
Yeah, you sure did, for some reason or another.
Yeah.
We got lots of good stuff to talk about tonight, and I guess I understand we got some other information that's going to be coming out. Something you might want to participate in, so we will find out what all that stuff is in just a little bit.
Me? Oh, cool.
Yeah, everybody will. So with that, why don't we just get started unless Jeff or Barbara has something else before we introduce our guest.
It's foggy in parts of California and fire in other parts of California. And
nice and cool most of yesterday.
Yeah.
I thought you was fixing to say it was snowing.
Not yet.
Compared to some of the days we had last week, it felt like it might as well have been snowing yesterday.
Yeah, last week it was very cool here, too. Yesterday wasn't real bad because it rained some and it was overcast, so it wasn't too bad. Today it's been cloudy, but it hasn't rained any here. And it got fairly warm, so tomorrow's supposed to be stormy, I guess, and raining a lot. So we'll have to wait and see. But 4th of July is supposed to almost be a washout, I think. So
you mean it's going to rain on the 4th of July there?
It's supposed to be storming here.
Oh.
A possibility of it anyway, put it that way.
That would be cool if they're just able to keep the mortars dry and still fire them off in the rain. That might look really cool.
Oh, I don't know. I'm sure they do that sometimes. I've seen it going on. So
I came across an interesting video. Apparently, some years ago, I think in San Diego, there was a technical malfunction, and at the very start of a fireworks evening, everything detonated at once, and it was like 45 or 90 seconds of just Death Star explosion level cacophony, and then it was like, that's it. We run out.
Oh.
We don't have anything more.
Well, Jeff, why don't you introduce our guest? Let's just
Yes.
get this thing.
Absolutely. Well, our guest tonight is paranormal investigator Rebecca Brumble, who has had a lifelong fascination with the paranormal, and rightfully so, reading ghost stories, moving to a haunted house, and learning all she can on the subject. In college, Rebecca founded an investigative group called Pittsburgh Night, and after college and a move to Philadelphia, she renamed her group Spirit of Pennsylvania, covering eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and eastern Maryland. And 15 years since the first Pennsylvania case, they're still going strong. So she attended a public ghost hunt at Fort Mifflin in 2006 when her love for the place took root. And after 10 years, she was recently elected to its board of directors, as well as being named Volunteer of the Year. And when she's not at Fort Mifflin, which she considers her second home, Rebecca is hosting the Shadows Radio here at Para X, Mondays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, and through Blue Topaz at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, or playing with beautiful daughter Olivia. So welcome, Rebecca Brumble.
Yay.
As she forgot to turn her mic on.
You didn't tell me to turn it back on.
Yeah.
You
Pretty
said
much
make
when it's
sure
not-
I mute it.
Live radio.
Hi guys, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
Doing good. I got to meet Rebecca when we was doing our Gettysburg trip this time. Her and Eric came down for, I don't know, about an hour and a half, something like that, 2 hours. And you guys got to be on the radio and talk a little bit right there from the hotel.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to actually get to, come out and see everybody's faces for once.
Which was good. How long have you been working at Fort Mifflin?
Well, I first attended an event about 10 years ago. And right after that, I started volunteering. Like, there was a volunteer day the very next day, and I actually just stuck around and hung out, and I've been there ever since.
Now, I was there one time, and it was in 2009, and I believe it was June. I was there, Ideal Event Management with the Ghost Hunters, had an event there. So I come over with Para X with Dave and Tommy Jones. Ended up broadcasting from, was it the gift shop or right there in the compound?
Yeah.
We broadcast live from there, and it was the first time that we was on CBS radio. So fantastic place. I enjoyed it, and I know I was amazed at the amount of people that come out for the ghost hunters, because they had an event before the investigation that night, and people was lined up out the hotel for must have been a block and a half, standing in line just waiting to come in and get autographs. I thought it was really something else. Does Ideal Event still go there and host things?
Occasionally. We kind of try to stay away from those big events anymore, just because they do draw in a lot of people, but they also draw in a lot of drama. So we try and stick to smaller events, and we host a lot of our own ghost hunts now too. But I think they do still do one event a year there.
Yeah, since they've not on TV, I think they've lost a lot of, I won't say following, because they're still pretty popular, but it's not publicized as much anymore, I don't think. So, but they still, if you go to Ideal's site, they still have offerings for other places that they're doing. They do have a lot of other people that they put into those things. So, yeah. But
Fort Mifflin does a lot of ghost tours still, though.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, our entire September through, the middle of September through the end of October is entirely ghost. We call it Halloween on Mud Island. And we do everything from ghost tours to ghost events to paranormal investigations. You name it, paranormal-wise, you can do it in October. We also do trick-or-treating with our ghosts for little kids, so you can come all dressed up and get candy from our resident spirits. So it's a lot of fun, and we definitely embrace the paranormal side of our history. And we also welcome any paranormal team that's interested can always rent the fort out for an evening. We have, fairly reasonable rates comparatively to some of the other sites around the world. It's $900 for 10 people for overnight and $45 off to midnight. Like, it's ridiculously cheap.
I know you guys doing a lot of stuff there with your own events. Why don't you give us a history of the fort?
Oh, you're going to put me on the spot. Now I got this. Hold on. All right. So the fort was commissioned in 1771, actually by the British. When the revolution broke out in the 1775-76, the British abandoned what was basically just mud hills at that point. The Americans came in, they hired the same guy that laid out Washington, D.C., and they said, build us a fort. And so he came in, he finished the fort. The fort was commissioned, like I said, in 1771. It was actually finished in 1776. It was, at that point, a brick wall with a lot of wooden structures on the inside. So it still was not the fort that you see today. During the Revolution, the British came up the Delaware River trying to get to the port of Philadelphia. And they had two obstacles. They had Fort Mercer on the New Jersey side, and they had Fort Mifflin on our side. Fort Mifflin held out. For 1,000 cannonballs an hour were getting lobbed from these British ships in the river. Mifflin was sending them back just as much. It actually at one point got so bad that they were telling the guys at garrison at the fort, they said, if you can run out and grab a British cannonball and come back so we can shoot it back at them, you get an extra grog of rum. And that worked because they were collecting cannonballs by the bucket load, trying to get them back out to the ships. They also sunk pikes out into the river to try and stop up the ships. Unfortunately for the fort, the back channel flooded because there was some heavy rains that came through. And two British ships were able to get around the back side of the fort and bombarded the back wall of the fort, which then finally took it down. Now, we do say that we are the fort that never surrendered, because when the last people left the fort and they jumped in a rowboat and they rowed across the river to Fort Mercer, they never took down the flag. So official surrender for a military installation, you have to take down your flag. And the men who protected Mifflin to the end did not take down their flag. So it's always been flying. It's been flying since 1776, and we still actually, we still fly that flag. So that was the Revolutionary War. And then during that time, Washington was actually able to get his troops to Valley Forge. So if it wasn't for Mifflin and all the 200 men garrisoned there, Washington never would have made it to Valley Forge. He would have been captured probably in Philadelphia itself. Civil War, we became a prison. And then we served all the way up through the end of the Korean War as a supply depot until we were officially decommissioned in the 1970s. And in 1986, we were officially labeled as a national monument and a museum. So it is one of the longest continually operational military installations in the United States, because it did run from 1771 all the way up to the 1970s. And I'm very proud of that.
It wasn't the fort where the Star Spangled Banner was supposedly.
South
No,
Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah, he was actually on a ship looking out at
Sumter. Right, okay.
Right.
American history is not one of my strong suits. Yeah.
Really? Man, I thought you knew everything.
My history stops in, 17th century Italy.
What I always like is that the Star Spangled Banner is a song with the almost unsingable tune that is a British drinking song and lyrics about a battle we lost.
There we go.
You got to be proud of everything, wins and losses.
Now, you was saying, because I've read the history there at Fort Mifflin that you guys have up for the history, but during the Revolution War, the British on November 15th bombarded the fort with over 200 cannon from ships on the river. The fort was defended with about 400 men. Do you know how many those defenders were killed in the fort?
We don't know for certain. We do know that about 25 of them did make it to Fort Mercer across the river in New Jersey. We do know that there was about 100 bodies buried at the fort. Beyond that, we're not entirely sure if people were killed or they might have just run off into, the world outside, I guess, because that was a very common thing. If you were getting, kind of cornered in a spot, just to kind of take off, which is, it's fine. But I mean, we like to say that of the 400 men, there probably were about 200 or so that actually did die there.
Is there an official cemetery at Fort Mifflin?
There is not anymore. There was for a very long time. But when they did the renovation to put in the parking lot, they actually reinterred everybody at Arlington Cemetery.
So they were buried out where the parking lot.
Correct. Yeah, right behind the hospital building where the parking lot is. And then there is a current Fort Mifflin Army base that actually has a driveway that goes up through what used to be the cemetery space.
Well, wait a minute. There's a current Fort Mifflin. There's another installation now?
There is. There is a military installation, is an Army Reserve base, and it's actually right next door. We share a driveway, we share a parking lot, and they are actually huge supporters of the original Fort Mifflin. So their current commandant is actually our honorary commandant and we have a ceremony for him every time they kind of change colors and everything.
Cool. Now, are there 4th of July events at Fort Mifflin?
There is. Tomorrow we are actually holding the Freedom Blast, which is kind of an open house, come and see all the fun stuff that we do. We'll be having tours, we'll be having cannon demonstrations, military installation demonstrations. They do fun and games for the kids. They like to do colonial games. We have a woman who specializes in Civil War medicine who will have her set up available. Not on the 4th itself, because Philadelphia has so many 4th of July events, but it's actually going to be tomorrow, July 2nd.
Yeah.
10 to 4.
Wow. They don't allow reenactments at the fort, do they?
Oh, absolutely. We do at least one a month, if not more. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We don't have, how do I put this? We do have reenactments. We do every war from Revolutionary all the way up to World War II. Nothing Vietnam related is permitted at the fort, but everything else they do in some form. The siege itself, the actual 2-day reenactment of the siege, takes place in November every year, so that we honor the men that gave their lives here at the fort. And then we also hold a Pirate Day, if you want to pretend that you're a seafarer. We do World War I, World War II. We do a Christmas reenactment, so you can see kind of what Christmas looked like in a military camp. And then we do Civil War reenactments twice a year. One, we do a prison reenactment, so you can see what a Civil War prison was like, and one an actual, storming of the gates. Now, obviously, none of these battles were fought at the fort, so there is a little bit of creative license taken with them, but they are a lot of fun, and the kids learn a lot, so it's good to have.
Now, you said in the history part that across the river from Fort Mifflin was Fort Mercer.
Yes.
Is it still there?
There's not much of Fort Mercer left. There's a few wall pieces, and then there's one outbuilding that is still standing. It's a private residence, though, so you can't access it. It is a state park in that you can, kind of tour the grounds, but the fort itself was actually taken down. It wasn't, it was never attacked.
So when they left Fort Mifflin and went across the river to Fort Mercer, did the British then take over Fort Mifflin?
They did. They actually, so when the men left Fort Mifflin, they actually set fire to a large majority of the buildings. But then, like I said, they left their flag up. And then the British did land. They did take over. They claimed the land, per se. But they didn't spend a lot of time there. They pretty much moved right into the port of Philadelphia.
So it was abandoned briefly by both.
Yeah. I mean, not necessarily abandoned per se. I mean, it was, kind of, it was scorched earth.
A strategic
Withdrawal.
withdrawal.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. I like that one.
Awesome. Now you have a pirate day?
We do have Pirate Day. That's one of my favorites.
Barbarous.
I love pirates.
Well, we have our Pirate Day in August. We actually have expanded it now beyond pirates to calling it our Seafarers Weekend, because we did open it up to tall ships and some other cool nautical things. So it's a lot of fun. We have a house band that does all sea shanties, and they dress up like pirates. They're awesome. They actually came to my birthday. I was so excited.
Now Fort Mifflin is on, obviously, ships can get through there, correct?
Yeah, so Fort Mifflin is what is officially known as Mud Island. It's a man-made, well, it's a natural island that was actually expanded by man. So it's technically considered a man-made island. Now, since the fort was built, it actually, we being man, has filled in the back channel to make the Philadelphia airport. So it's not actually an island today. But we do have water on 3 sides, and it does sit right on the channel of the Delaware River. So it's the main river into the city of Philadelphia.
So how big an area is the fort?
The fort itself, the actual walls, it's just under 2.5 acres. The actual fort property is more about 10. We do own a lot of ground, and there is a World War I, World War II gun battery that was actually hidden in the woods outside of the fort walls. Which not a lot of people know about. Everyone always skips that part. Like, go for a hike. They're there. They're cool.
Well, they during World War II, they had anti-aircraft emplacements put in there too.
Yes, there were some within the walls. They sat where the cannons used to be, and then they said there was some gun batteries that were actually hidden in the woods for the same purpose.
Holy smokes. I didn't think that they would get that far in with battery placements. Were they really worried about invasion?
I don't know for sure.
Wild.
I can't say one way or the other.
I would say that they were probably taking all kinds of precautions because they did have a lot of shipbuilding and they stored munitions there too, right?
Yeah, it was actually a munitions depot and a storage depot for about 50 years. So, I mean, there was quite a lot of stuff still at the fort that needed protecting. Beyond that, there actually were German U-boats that were coming up the Delaware River into the Delaware Bay, things like that. So, I mean, there are reasons for concern, I guess.
That's cool. Well, not cool, but yeah. So, a little bit about the fort, because I remember bits and pieces of it from television shows, and I know that there was a lot of underground bunkers. Can you kind of explain the layout just a little bit?
Sure. So Mifflin is a standard star fort. That means that it has 5 points. It's got a brick wall that goes all the way around the fort. There are 4 sally ports, which are the main entrances. There's the North Sally Port, which is actually our large 2-story gates, and we actually still have the original gates, which is a very rare thing. We have the West Sally Port, which is the main port you would come in from our parking lot. That's where we kind of send visitors through today. And then the South Sally Port is no longer accessible. It goes out to the moat. So, but all our other Sally Ports are there. At each Sally Port, there are 2 guard sheds actually built into the walls themselves. Then once you're in the fort, you have a giant parade ground, which is so cool because when you first walk through those walls and that ground spreads out in front of you, it's a breathtaking sight. Because it's so easy to imagine any time period of soldier marching through there. You know, you can kind of hear the musket fire echoing off the walls. It's such a cool sight. But we do have 7 outbuildings that are still standing. There is what was the quartermaster's shop, now our gift shop. We have an officer's barracks for enlisted officers, which is a 2-story building that is open. That's where we keep a lot of our museum pieces. We have a officers' quarters, which is where officers that were married with children would actually get a one-room apartment. That's the building that actually was recently in a fire last year. We have the Commandant's House, which is a two-story building dead center of the parade ground where the Commandant lived from the late 1800s on. We have our original blacksmith shop. We have the original hospital building and some other things. Now, the cool things that you're talking about, the underground pieces, there are what are called casemates. These are actually built into the walls, buried under the earth, and then kind of set into the ground. And we have 12 of them. So there's casemates 1 through 5 are actually built into the wall, and they were used as housing. They were used as our Civil War prison. They are the ones that if you've ever seen Fort Mifflin on TV, you've probably seen casemates 1 through 5 because those are our most famous ghosts back there. We do have a bake oven that is a casemate. We have a powder magazine. We actually have a torpedo chute as well. Solitary confinement, which was only recently uncovered. And then we have a couple of casemates that are actually outside the walls that were used for storage. Because you don't want to store your powder where your people are sleeping. They found out that that's a bad thing, especially if you're lighting everything by stove.
Yeah, I can imagine that. So, yeah, torpedo chutes?
We do, yeah. So I know a lot of people don't think of torpedoes as a Civil War thing, but we actually had a torpedo. We have a torpedo magazine where they actually, I mean, I'm not entirely sure if they used it during the Revolutionary War. I know that they did try and use it during the Civil War, but they would wind up these little clockwork bombs, drop them into the chute, and hope that they made it out to the river before they exploded. And they're kind of cool looking. But nowadays, all you can do is look down and kind of see like the square hole where they would have dropped the thing. You can't drop anything.
How often did they use that?
I don't know that they ever actually used it in battle. I don't have any record of them actually torpedoing anyone. But it's nice to have.
Oh yeah, surprise attack. Yeah.
Especially because the torpedo magazine is actually inside the walls, so and buried, like I said, in one of these underground casemates. So if there's anybody in there dropping bombs, you have no idea they're coming.
Yep. Sure wouldn't. Just tough luck.
Oh, I'm just trying to figure out how they would project it out.
Well, they had a little clockwork fin on the back, so they would wind up the clockwork fin, drop it in, and then the tide of the river is supposed to pull them out.
Cool.
Yep. Amazing technology.
This is Civil War?
That's Civil War.
Amazing.
Yeah, those were Civil War, yep.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome technology.
So you kind of answered part of it, but one of the things, the building you said that was the officers' building in the commandant's office in the center of the fort.
The commandant.
Yeah, when we was there in 2009, they were working on the inside of that, reconstructing or working on something, redoing it. Did they get it finished?
They did not. So the commandant's house was actually intact up until the late 1980s. And then we had a group of overnight guests who let their fire go untended, and unfortunately, it gutted the entire building. So the decision was made in the 2000s to rebuild the roof. So the roof has been restored, the cupola has been restored, but on the inside, we've kind of just agreed to let it go, and then put in a, looks like a back deck, it looks like some decking, just so you can kind of walk out into the space to see kind of around some of the columns and things. But the decision was made to leave it as is, at least for now.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about some of the good stuff. Or do you want to wait till after break? You want to do that till after break, and then we'll talk about some of the things that goes on in the fort.
Well, the question I still have a couple of questions
go
about
ahead.
The fort, and that is, you recently uncovered some isolation cells.
Yeah, so casemate 11 is our solitary confinement cell. It was actually buried just after World War One. They actually sealed off the entrance. Why they did that, we're not entirely sure. And the official story on how we uncovered it is that our handyman at the time was cutting the grass and actually fell into a sinkhole, which led to the stairs, which then led to us uncovering the whole thing. If you watched the Ghost Hunters episode with Fort Mifflin, you can see the Ghost Hunters go actually down into the hole when it was still, go down this ladder into this creepy dark dungeon. Now it's actually legitimate staircase into thing. But it is, when you go down in there, the door is just about 2 feet wide. You go in, and there is one cell, and that's it. And it was used to house 2 men, William Howe and Bernard Devlin, not at the same time, 2 different times. William Howe is the only person to be hung for treason at the fort. He's actually the only person we know of by name to actually have been executed at the fort. He was imprisoned for desertion. He then shot a federal marshal who was trying to take him back into custody. And then for that, he was then brought back to the fort and hung for treason. Since then, it's actually come out that he was probably pretty innocent. And I can tell you that whole story if you want to hear the whole thing. But so we like to tell everybody that he is actually innocent. But he spent a good portion of his time incarceration down there. And then Bernard Devlin, we are not entirely sure what he was sent down there for. We know that he was a Civil War prisoner. He was an Irishman. He liked to play a lot of practical jokes, and we think that one of his practical jokes just went a little too far, and his commanding officer or his whoever was in charge of him at the time just basically sent him down there for a short period of time to kind of cool him off a little bit.
So,
You think about what you did there, Soldier.
Yes. Go sit in a dungeon.
So how much more things do you think is kind of like still hidden in the fort that people hasn't found yet? Are they looking for other things now?
So the city of Philadelphia has actually told us we cannot do any excavation of the fort at this time. So they've kind of put an end to any further discovery, I guess, unless anybody falls into another sinkhole. There's a couple of spots that people are, I guess they're theorizing that there is something else there. There's a few spots where, based on other star-shaped forts and other star-shaped layouts, that there should be another casemate somewhere, a guard shack somewhere. Now we know that a lot of the Civil War buildings, the Revolutionary War buildings obviously were burnt down, but there should be some bulwark in the walls that we kind of haven't uncovered yet, and that's kind of what people have been poking around, looking for. We wanted to get a ground penetrating radar in there. Unfortunately, that did not happen when we thought it was going to happen, so that's hopefully on the list for the future.
Yes.
Barbara, you got more?
Not about the fort directly. We can take a break and come back and talk about the ghosts.
Yep. That's what I was going to do. So we can do that. Let me get set up here for it. And I guess seeing as how Jeff is still working off time, I guess, something like that. So
I'm just trying to stay connected at this point. Skype is not being pleasant tonight.
Well, why don't you take and go ahead and take us out, and then I'll bring us back. How's that sound?
Don't do a huge pause in a sentence like that. I thought I got dropped again. You're listening to the Paranormal View on para-x.com with hosts Henry Foister, Ceiling Cat Barbara Duncan, and myself, Jeffrey Gould, with tonight's guest, Rebecca Brumble. So stay tuned for more of the Paranormal View in Fort Mifflin after the break.
Whether you're listening at home, at work, or anywhere, thanks for making Para-X part of your day. Your source for everything paranormal, Para-X.
And welcome back, everybody, right here to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Great show, and rooms filling up nicely. And those listening from around the world, we appreciate each and every one of you also. Tonight, we have with us Jeffrey Gould.
Hello.
And Barbara Duncan. And our guest, I want to welcome her back, Rebecca Brumble.
Thank you for having me.
And we are talking about Fort Mifflin. There's lots of reasons we're talking about Fort Mifflin. What? Huh? There's a lot of reasons we're talking about Fort Mifflin. I knew I'd get it right in a minute. And it's a very, I guess, haunted location, you might say. You went there as just a I guess, tour and fell in love with the place. Did you go as just touring the fort as historical, or was it like a paranormal event that you was doing?
So the first time I went, it was a paranormal event. So I had seen it on one of the shows or something, and then I saw that they were doing an event, so I went. But I like the event went from it was like 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. or something like that, and at 6 a.m. when they cleared everybody out, I went and slept in my car, and I came back at 10 o'clock to help them with a cleanup day they were having the next day. So I guess it kind of one bled into the other. But no, the initial thing that brought me there was definitely the ghosts.
So did you see anything or hear anything on that?
That first event, I really didn't. And it was simply because there was so many people there. It was one of those ideal events that you mentioned before. Just they had a lot of people. Now the fort is pretty big, and you can lose 50 to 100 people fairly easily in all those buildings. I don't know how many people they had, but it was a lot. And I feel like all I heard all night was everybody else. So that first time, not so much. After I started coming back and the spirits started getting to know me, I have never been disappointed there. Even when I just go because it's a Tuesday and I want to go, walk around, never been disappointed.
So before anything else, why don't you let everyone know about the different paranormal activities that takes place in the fort? Some of the things where people has reported seeing, hearing, and the different things like that. And to let people know, if you have headphones, you might want to get them, because after a while, we're going to be playing a couple EVPs.
Yeah, it's some really good ones too. So some of our more famous spirits that you've probably heard of, the biggest one that people always hear about is our Screaming Lady. And there's a lot of stories that get passed around about who she actually is. But the only thing we know for sure is that it happens any time of the day, for any reason. We're not entirely sure. We don't know why or where or how, but we know for two things. Number one, it always comes from behind the officers' quarters, which is that 2-story apartment building that I told you about. It always comes from behind there. Now, there's two things back there. There's a hill that leads to the moat, and there is a patio where the officers' wives would hang out, and they would do laundry, they would, cook, things like that. So a lot of reasons for a woman to be behind that building. It is a blood-curdling shriek. I've heard it several times in my life, and I can tell you the first time I heard it, I came sprinting, and I am not a runner, but I came sprinting from across the fort because I thought somebody fell in the moat. That's what it sounded like. It sounded like somebody was dying. It's terrifying. The really bizarre thing about this is if you're in the officers' barracks, which is where the enlisted men slept, you cannot hear the scream. You can hear it anywhere else in the fort. You can hear it on the road driving up to the fort, but you cannot hear it in that one particular building.
Now, does this happen at different times, or a particular certain time of the day or night?
We've been trying to track it to see if there's a pattern to it, but it doesn't seem to be. It seems to be kind of whenever. I've had it happen 2 o'clock in the morning. I've had it happen at 6 o'clock when I was leading a ghost tour. I had it happen at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon when the fort was full of people for a reenactment. That was fun, trying to explain that. So it is weird and random, and we've had people actually call the cops when the fort was closed because they heard the scream and they thought someone was being murdered in the woods around the fort. So we actually have cop, police reports of cops coming to check on this scream.
Huh. What is the wildlife situation there?
We do have a lot of geese. a lot of rabbits. We have a few fort cats.
Foxes?
We do have a couple of foxes, but this is not a fox's cry. We've looked into that. We do have 2 red foxes that made their burrow on top of the hill, but this is definitely like, think of your worst horror movie, scream chiller movie. That's what it sounds like.
I've heard fox screams that literally sound like a woman being slowly dismembered. And they really do sound like human females when they're screaming. Just saying.
Jeff,
Oh no, I absolutely agree with you, and this is something that we have looked into. And I don't discount that might be a possibility, but I've been behind the building when the scream happened, and there was nothing there. So, I don't know. Like I said, I mean, I'm not discounting that it might be that. It might just be that, we've been mislabeling it for all these years. I hope not, because, it's a cool story, but
could be both too.
Yeah. It could be a mix of things. Sometimes people always look for another explanation. I've never been one. If you have a better explanation,
well, I want to know why it isn't heard in one specific building, because
that is the first thing. I have no idea, but I told you the first time I heard it, I went sprinting. I was clear across the fort in the bake shop, and the bake shop is underground, and a good, like I said, clear across the fort. Like, you could not possibly get any further away and still be inside the fort walls from one spot to the other. I heard it clear as a bell. I have the recording of it, and of course me saying bad words as I went sprinting, because like I said, I thought somebody had hurt themselves. But there were people sitting in the officers' quarters right next door. These buildings literally touch. The 2 patios of the 2 buildings touch. So these buildings are, maybe 15 feet away. They didn't hear it. They were sitting there talking. They were not asleep. They were not, on their phones. They were just sitting there having a conversation, and they didn't hear it.
Wow. Just that one.
Maybe they had a ghost. They had it ghost proofed.
That's what. It's like a little bubble around that house. I don't know why.
Well, speaking of that, before you tell anything else about the fort, when was the first report ever that someone had seen a ghost or heard some sort of a paranormal activity?
So the first one that I'm aware of is actually in the 70s, before the fort was actually decommissioned. Some of the guys that were in charge of clearing out the munitions that were stored there were actually saying that they were seeing and hearing many people. Now, in the 60s, a lot of people from the local town would kind of come through the fort and use it as a hiking path and thing. But these guys were claiming, and again, we have to take their word for it, that they looked for people and they didn't see anyone. So that's the first report that I know of. I'm sure some other people will have a different answer for you.
Wow.
Well, I'm curious about that one area that you can't hear screams in it. Does that area have activity in it, or is it, like Jeff said, kind of ghost-proofed?
It's not. So there actually is activity specific to that building. So that building, like I said, was these big, long barrack rooms, and they would have, this is where the bunks were for a lot of the enlisted men. Their rooms are about 30 feet long by 10 foot wide, maybe 15 foot wide. They had 2 rows of bunks. They were 4 stack bunks, which means that 2 guys would share a top bunk, 2 guys would share the bottom bunk, and they would spend their off time in these bunks with the, like a mess table going down the middle for cards and hanging out and doing all that kind of stuff. And in this building, we actually have reports of people hearing boot steps. So like people getting ready, getting dressed. If you're around when shift change happens, which is right around 6 a.m. and then again around 5 p.m., which is also when mess call would happen, you can hear a lot of boot steps, almost like, people jumping out of beds and throwing on whatever and going to get wherever they need to get to. A lot of that. And then we also have what we call our unknown tour guide who shows up there. Now, the unknown tour guide kind of roams around the fort, but one of the coolest stories that I ever heard was there was a group of students. I would say they were 8th, 9th grade. They were about 13, 14 years old. And they stood in front of one of the sets of bunks to take a photo. And it was 4 girls, and whoever their chaperone was. The chaperone took the photo. Now, this was before digital cameras, so these photos actually had to go to, a print shop and actually be printed. And so these photos were printed out, and was it take a week or whatever it took. You get your pictures back, and one of the girls in the photo actually wanted to know who the soldier was standing behind them, because they didn't remember anybody taking the picture with them. They thought it was just them standing in front of these bunk beds. They brought the photo to the fort. We confirmed that wasn't any of our tour guides or anybody who worked at the fort at the time. And so the girl took the photo into school. And unfortunately for our story, the girl went to Catholic school. And so the nuns confiscated it and threw it away. But that girl's name is Katie Brown, and she actually portrays one of our blacksmiths. So if you ever come to a fort event and Katie is working in the blacksmith shop, ask her about the photo and she will tell you all about it.
Wow. So why did they get rid of it? They was afraid people might think the place was haunted?
Or it was just a probability of like passing notes kind of a thing.
Well, yeah, it actually, her teacher actually got rid of it. So she took it to school, and she went to Catholic school, and the nun disposed of it.
Sure,
let's get everybody out.
Yeah, they'll get rid of it. That way people won't think that anything's haunted. Yeah, ghosts don't exist.
So that's an on-tour guide. So we do have other spirits too. I can keep going if you want.
No, keep going.
All right. So another really cool spirit that we have is actually in the blacksmith shop, like I was just mentioning, where Katie works. So our blacksmith shop is from 1864. So post-Revolutionary War, almost post-Civil War, depending on where you draw your lines. And at the time, the guy that worked in there, his name was Jacob Schmidt. He was our blacksmith. So he, when the heat of Philadelphia summers came along, would open all the doors, open all the windows, get his forge going, and start cranking out everything that he needed for the fort. They did, everything from horseshoes to brackets for the windows. He did it all. The commandant at the time was an exceptionally cranky person who did not like the noise from the blacksmith. And then his wife dislike the smell. So the commandant made an order that the blacksmith shop, the doors and windows had to be closed at all times to keep the smell and the noise from drifting and bothering them. So this went on while Jacob was alive. He would open the doors, the commandant would order them closed. He would open the doors, the commandant would order them closed. And this was a consistent thing that happened. Now, Jacob passed away of natural-ish causes, as in, we're not entirely sure what he died of, but we know he wasn't murdered. He was buried at the fort, and he's one of those sets of bones that was actually reinterred at Arlington. But so now, if you go to the blacksmith shop and you close the doors, and then you come back in a little bit of time, the doors will actually be open again. And we actually had our caretaker, Wayne, actually did a test one night. He closed the door, he deadbolted it shut, and it had iron hinges keeping this door closed with a actual padlock. He came back in the morning, the iron hinges were actually bent, the padlock was off, and the door was in the yard.
He said, I want this open.
Pretty much. So he was determined that door was going to be open. Now, other things, he likes to move his tools around. So if you move his tools, he will put them back on the shelf. He likes to make a lot of anvil noises, I think just to piss off the commandant. But he likes to bang on his anvil. And actually, people have reported seeing him recently. Then when I say recently, within the last 2 or 3 years, we've gotten several reports of people saying that they've actually seen him. A tall-ish, dark-haired man with a leather apron on, with a light shirt and dark pants. And they all have been consistent stories in that they're seeing somebody walking back and forth from the anvil to the tools, but these people are not associated with each other. And this is actually the first time I've said that out loud. So I'm thinking they're not getting the story from each other. But it has been cool that the last, like I said, 2 or 3 years, we've been getting these claims that people are actually starting to see him, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a mixture of probably a residual and active haunt.
We absolutely do. I mean, the residuals, we have soldiers that march around the walls. We have people that march through the parade ground. We have people drumming cadences. We have cannon fire. You know, all those residual type things that you would expect at a battlefield, we've got all those. But what we do have also is personalities. And these spirits, when we talk about the intelligent or the active hauntings, they all have personalities that you can track back. So when you go and you listen to the stories people are telling, you go, oh, you might not know it, but that is William Howe. Or, oh, you might not know it, but that is the soldier from casemate number 1. And we can actually put them together so that these stories are actually connecting to each other based on the spirit's personalities, which is really cool to me.
Now, how much interaction is there between the active hauntings and the staff at Fort Mifflin?
Well, Wayne actually was living there before he retired. He was living there 24/7, and he actually had a pact with the spirits saying, this is my room. You leave this room alone, and you can do whatever you want out there. So he actually never had any interaction with them. Now, the staff that's currently there, they're all relatively new, and they've all had so many hauntings between them. It's funny because they always tell me, because I'm kind of like the resident ghost hunter collector story person. And they'll all tell me, oh, guess what? I was in here and I saw the lamplighter. I was here and I saw the gopher running down the big shop. And it's fun because like these people came into the fort for the historical side of things, and they're starting to embrace and enjoy the historical aspect of it, or I'm sorry, the paranormal aspect of it, which is great because I think those two definitely go hand in hand. But the staff in general, the more time you spend in the fort, the more likely they're going to start following you around. And certain ones definitely take a shine to certain people. I've noticed that, for example, Joe is our newest, he's our program and development manager. He recently started, and he gets a lot of interaction from the spirit in the bake shop. Whereas I tend to get a lot more interaction from the guys down in casemate 11, the solitary confinement. Scott, a guy on my team, he gets a lot of interaction from the commandant in the commandant's house. So, I mean, I guess it depends who you are, but they definitely take a shine to you. And once they know that you're coming back again, they make a point to connect with you, which is really cool.
Wow.
Have they provided much information as to who they are and how they died, or what it was that their job was there?
Some of them actually have. We've gotten several names, in so much that we know that the spirit that kind of, I'll say haunts, but he lives in the bake shop and he kind of travels down the hallway of casemate 1 through 5. His name is Michael. He told us that. And we were able to track back that Michael worked in that area. He was a gopher. His job was basically to take stuff from the bake shop and deliver it to the prisoners. So that was his job. We were able to find him in the records. He also told us that he walks funny, which the Michael that we found in the records actually had a limp and he wasn't a little person per se, but he was on the shorter stature. Like he never got above like 5 foot tall or something like that. So that was very interesting to connect that. We've gotten names of the bunker children that run around the yard who passed away from yellow fever. We've gotten their names. There's other ones that have told us how they passed away. You know, for example, the one that told us that the bomb blew up in the supply depot. That one. We have Bernard Devlin, who told us that, you know, he was there. He's the one that likes to, you know, pick up girls' skirts and squeeze them on the butt.
Okay.
Yeah. But then there's some that have never told us, and we just kind of have assigned them a name just to give some humanity to them. Because sometimes it's weird to be like, oh yeah, that spirit in casemate number 4. You know, well, no, we call him the judge because he seems to be very judgmental and very cranky. So, you know, sometimes you have to do that assigning yourself, at least until you get more information. But they are very, very talkative too. If you get them in the right mood, they
That sounds like a great validation for ghost investigations, is to be able to say, well, I didn't know this person, but I'm able to verify that they are who they say they are.
Yeah, and the fort has actually made a point to when we do our ghost tours, when we tell our stories, we only tell stories that, number one, have either been multiple confirmed, which means that multiple people have reported the same interaction with the same spirit, or we have some kind of tangible proof behind it. We have a photo, we have a audio clip, we have something. Because too many sites have been caught where, somebody comes in and says, oh, I saw Casper the Friendly Ghost dancing a jig on William, I'll say Thomas Jefferson's face, something totally outlandish, and then the site runs with that story, and then they get caught, like, oh, that didn't really happen. So we've made a point to we keep track of all the stories that people tell us, but the ones that we translate to everybody else are only the ones that, like I said, have been multiple confirmed, that we know are true within the walls of our fort. And if we're able to provide historical background that supports those stories, that makes it even better.
Is there one era that seems to be more pronounced than the others? Because if it's going from 1777 to modern day times, surely there must be like a layer upon layer of different types of people there.
You would think, but surprisingly, we get a lot of Civil War soldiers and a lot of Revolutionary War soldiers. We don't get a lot of interaction with anybody from anything later than the Civil War. And it could be because at that point the fort became a depot rather than an active garrison. So the amount of bodies going through the space was considerably less, which means that, probably less people passed away or, were there. So that might be one reason why. There were no significant battles at that point. Nobody was executed or anything like that, so there's no emotional ties to the space after the Civil War. So, I would expect, like you said, that you would get those layers upon layers. We get, like I said, we get a lot of Civil War. Actually, no, that's not even true. I'm sorry, I'm actually lying to you. We get a lot of Revolutionary War, and I think that that's obviously tied to the siege. And then we have a few Civil War. So Civil War would be like number 2, but the majority of the spirits that I believe we interact with are Revolutionary War.
That pretty much makes sense. That's back when it was a lot of turmoil in the area and I guess fighting in the fort.
Yes, for sure.
So, well, now, if you go out into some of the underground places, like some of the casemates, what do you find in some of those areas?
So casemate 11, like I said, that's our solitary confinement. William Howe is there, and Bernard Devlin hangs out there as well. William Howe will actually help women up and over thresholds and things like that. He's very much a gentleman, but he does get very snappy with you. If you accuse him of treason, things like that, he will curse you out. He has been known to curse out people and things. Not that I've ever pushed his buttons, ever. Nope. Bernard Devlin is a little more crass and crude. He does like to grab the rear end of females, especially in the summer months when everybody's wearing shorts. He likes to get his. So those guys hang out there. In the Torpedo magazine, actually, is a very cool experience that I had there. So if you walk into the Torpedo magazine, it's a completely dark room with a hole in the floor that goes down out into the river that we talked about earlier. And we were in there, myself and Scott and a few other people, and we were doing some EVP work. And one of the things that we actually got was we were asking questions and talking about, like, how many people are in this room? Can you count the people in this room? Things like that, where we're trying to get an idea if there was more than one spirit there, stuff like that. And the one guy finally said, "You're interrupting our work. Get out or help."
Get out or help.
When I heard that, now, this is an EVP. EVPs are usually a couple of syllables. This was a full thing. It was interrupting our work, get out or help. I was like, wow.
Now, did you only catch that on the recorder, or did you hear it?
We did. We actually only heard it in the recorder. Actually, it was Scott's recorder, where, and I wish I had a copy of it to send to you to play. Unfortunately, he has that, and I wasn't able to get a hold of him. He's on vacation this week. But, yeah, it was on his recorder. It wasn't on any of the other recorders that were in the room. It was just that one, and it was clear as You know, me yelling at you from across the room. It was incredible. Now we've gotten other people in, like, while we're in that room, we've actually had a lot of disembodied voices in that space. This was clearly an EVP, but it was one of the coolest ones.
Now that's kind of
Wow.
interesting because it's almost as if they're living their time frame, but somehow you're intruding into it.
It is. I mean, I like to think that the people at the fort, the spirits that we have at the fort, are still active duty. They still think that their job is to defend the fort, and I hope that that's really what they're thinking, because they, you know, do the job that they're supposed to do. The sentries do their walks. The people working in the big shop, the gophers, they run around. So I don't know so much if it's that they still think their timeline is going on, or more so that, you know, their job is not finished. You know, their job was to protect and defend the fort, and they're still doing that.
And they still have to see it as in their time frame, no, because if they're actually working on the torpedoes and stuff like that, you don't have any of those there, so they're actually seeing them in their time period.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
So just how furnished are these casements? Do you have items in there from the time period?
No, not so much. So in the soldiers' quarters, the room that you can't hear the scream in, there is a whole museum section, and that's the only space that has period artifacts in it. We did have other museum pieces set up in the building that caught fire, but unfortunately, when the building caught fire, they all got drenched, so they're in the process of restoration. So hopefully, that building will again have some artifacts in it eventually. But for now, the only building that actually has period artifacts in it is the officers' barracks. Now, the casemates have like some benches and things, but they were all made modern. So there's nothing really. There is a few like cast iron stoves or potbelly stoves, which date to later than the fort's build. So, you know, probably, we haven't officially dated them, but probably 1900s.
What about the cannon?
We have two cannons. We have the big one, and that's actually what they call it, the big one. There's the big one, and then there's Tom. Tom is a 7-inch repeater, and then we have the 4-foot big cannon. Tom we use for events, and the big one we use to scare the crap out of the pilots landing at the airport.
So they are functional cannons. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. We have two functioning cannons. We have a full battery of functioning muskets of varying time periods as well. We do not live fire. We do blank fire demonstrations, but active military demonstrations, so people can kind of get an idea of what it was like when those cannonballs were coming in. We don't have any cannons still on the walls. They've all been decommissioned and taken down, but we did at one point have 20-foot barrel cannons up on the walls.
Wow. You can see you sinking a couple of yachts in the Delaware River.
Yeah.
Just a few, yeah.
I think you only shoot powder out of them, though. You don't put any shells in them.
Not anymore, no.
Yeah.
They won't let us.
Yeah.
We tried to shoot the geese one time, and apparently they frown on that.
I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take our last break, and when we come back, we will play some EVPs. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the things in the fort, and then we're going to talk about a couple other things. Yes. Something that you're supposed to be revealing.
Yes.
Okay. So, Jeff, you still with us?
Yes. I also wanted to add, by the way, that a lot of people forget because they're used to seeing movies where you just see like a cannon in the distance, they go boom, and then you see the carnage that takes place. But the cannonballs only traveled about 60 miles an hour. You could actually see them coming at you. Really? That must have been pretty terrifying.
Yeah, I would
say
it is.
Which way do I duck? So you're listening to the Paranormal View on para-x.com with hosts Henry Foister, Ceiling Cat, Barbara Duncan, and myself, Jeffrey Gould, with tonight's awesome guest, paranormal investigator Rebecca Brumble. So stay tuned for more about Fort Mifflin and the Paranormal View after the break.
From the author of the Ghost of Hollywood series and Workplace Spells comes a book for all lovers of pets, Animal Spells and Magic by Marla Brooks. Learn how to choose your next pet according to their astrological sign. Explore animal superstitions. Learn 25 magic spells for your pets and get instructions on creating your own spells. Learn who to call upon and what to use to cast these spells. Includes special chapters by Reverend Tim Shaw, Psychic to the Stars Kenny Kingston, Psychic Medium Victoria Gross, Animal Communicator Dinah Roseberry, and Shaman Willie Windwalker Gibson. This is the perfect book for all animal lovers. Animal Spells and Magic by Marla Brooks. For details on how to get your copy of this amazing new book, go to www.schifferbooks.com or check out Marla Brooks online at www.marlabrooks.com. This would make the perfect gift for the animal lover in your life. Go to www.schifferbooks.com or ask about it at your local bookstore.
My name is Greg Bakken. I'm a writer, a producer, and a paranormal investigator. My favorite way of communicating with spirits is through using the spirit box, also known as a ghost box. I invite you to listen to me every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Central for interviews with people in the paranormal community and beyond. Plus, I will also include as much of my spirit box evidence as I can during my show.
My name is Greg. Can you say Greg? Can you say Jeff? Greg. Jeff.
Join me every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Central Time for Minnesota Ghost Box, only on Para-X Radio.
Hi, I'm Rosalind Bound, and you are listening to The Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network.
I'm Jenna Valadez with The Basement Files. Tune in Friday nights, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Para-X Radio Network.
There's a darkness in the hallway. Voices that seem to come from nowhere. Alone at night, there is a feeling that something or someone is near. Where can you go? Who can you turn to? Para-X Radio and the all-new Para-X Vision can help. Our knowledgeable host and expert guest can help you find some answers and take a glimpse into the unknown. Para-X Radio and Para-X Vision, programming for the open mind.
Rat! Rat! Where are you going?
I'm going back to the Paranormal View, back where I belong.
Please, please, take me with you.
No, I'm through with everything here. I want to see if there's something left in life I haven't explored. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, Rat, don't run to them. They talk about ghosts and hauntings, UFOs, and all kind of supernatural scary stuff.
You'll never understand, will you, Scarlet?
No!
Well, that's your misfortune.
Rat, if you go, where shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear. Line!
Oh, you gotta be kidding.
That's the Paranormal View with your host, Henry Foister, Jeffrey Gould, and Barbara Duncan. Every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the Para-X Radio Network.
And welcome back, everybody, right here to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight and listening. And we have people in chat room. We got listeners from around the world. And speaking of that, Barbara, where do we have listeners from?
Henry, tonight they're listening in from the United States, United Kingdom, and hello, Canada, celebrating your 150th anniversary. Australia, and we have a couple of unknowns listening in.
Yeah, they just wanted to find out about the fort. I know what it is.
Reconnaissance.
Yeah. And I want to welcome back Rebecca.
Thank you.
All right. I know that in some of the casemates, people has some paranormal activity and get some EVPs, don't they?
Absolutely. So, I mean, in my opinion, I'll be honest with you. The casemates are not my favorite place to investigate, in so much that they've kind of been overhyped so much that people get really frustrated because things don't happen like they do on TV. Now, we do have a Civil War soldier that hangs out in casemate number 1. We have Michael the Gopher that hangs out kind of in the hallway. We have the judge that hangs out in casemate number 4, and the faceless man that hangs out in casemate number 5. The problem is that TV made them seem much cooler than they are. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're all cool spirits. They just, in my opinion, and again, this is my opinion, this is not the fort's opinion, is that, there are spirits all over the fort. But yeah, no, I mean, in the casemates too, I think that they're overhyped a little bit.
Well, that's also the job of those, silly shows that, I'm like, just show what happens. Don't, don't, they're going to a commercial the minute they hear, patink, oh, what was that? I'm like, oh, come on, people.
Yeah, they have to have ratings, and that's what gets the ratings. Yes.
Yeah, I just wish it didn't color people's opinion quite as much as it does, because sometimes people come in there and they get all frustrated
because
it doesn't happen that way. But let me tell you this story really quickly, and this actually ties into that frustration. So I was leading a paranormal tour group, and these were actually people we were doing like little mini 15-minute investigations at all these different locations during the night. And it was the end of the night, and I had a group of people that they were there for the scare. They were not there for the actual experience. They wanted something to pop out and go boo. And this was one of the first times I had been asked by the fort to lead a group like this, so I was a little bit cocky. I have to admit, I was definitely a little bit on the cocky side. So we get to casemate number 4, which is one of the smaller ones. It was used mostly for storage. During the Civil War, they did house a few war protesters there, some dissenters from the civilian population. So we're sitting there, and nothing was really happening. Like I said, it wasn't an overly exciting evening. So I stood up and I said, Judge, I know you're in here. I know you like to mess with people, and I was kind of giving them the stern speech about how these people were here for an event and nothing was happening, and they were very disappointed. Now, I know now that was not the way to approach that situation. Back then, I was just wanted these people to have a good time because I wanted the fort to ask me back again. So not necessarily the way to handle that situation, but that's how I did. So we're sitting there on these benches, and a few girls in the front of the room had said they were starting to feel a little uncomfortable. They were going to go wait outside. Okay, so they get up, they leave. So now there's about 4 people in the room with me. All of a sudden, it sounds like someone took a wooden door and at full speed slams it shut. Now, casemates are brick, they're archways, and they're all enclosed, so everything echoes. So not only did somebody slam this wooden door shut, but they slammed this wooden door shut with reverb to the highest power. So it was very loud. Now, just for clarification, there are no wooden doors in the casemates. So it's not like somebody actually slammed a wooden door. Could they have dropped something? Possibly, but I mean, this sounded like it was in the room with us. Next thing I know, my head goes flying backwards, and I bounced my head off the wall. And it felt like someone decked me in the face. Now, after 16 years of martial arts, I've been hit in the face a couple of times. I know what that feels like. And this felt like someone decked me in the face. So at the time, I kind of handed my group over to one of my associates who was there with me, and I walked outside, and I was like, all right, I just need some air. So I left. And that night, nothing was really, like, you look at my face, it was red, but it wasn't bad. The next day, I had a black eye to rival anyone's street fight you've ever seen. It was the darkest thing I've ever experienced in my life. So it took me 2.5 years before I finally went back into that room. And then the judge and I apologized to the air, and hopefully he accepted my apology because he hasn't punched me again. So that's always good.
And you don't think it was one of the people that was investigating got scared or something and thought they seen something and just swung at it?
No, because everyone was sitting. As far as I did not see an actual fist come at me. Oh. If they did, they would have had to been super fast because I did not see any fists come at me.
Well, if it was in the dark, I don't see anything in the dark anyway, so it would probably just hit me. What casemate was that in?
That was casemate number 4.
Number 4.
Now,
Okay.
were there ever any wooden doors in those casemates at all?
Not. Trying to think. No, I think they were all. What's it called? They were all metal doors. There is a wooden door now on casemate number 1, but it's not original. So they would have all been kind of like this heavy. They would have been super thick oak with stud, or they would have been metal cell doors.
Interesting that
So
they
what-
could have slammed a door in their world and you could all hear it.
Well, I wonder, I actually have considered this a time, and I've gone back and I've looked to see what's there. Now those casemates are constantly changing in so much that, you know, sometimes you go in there and there's benches, sometimes you go in there and there's some chairs, and they use them for storage a lot. So the stuff that's actually in the room is constantly changing. But at the time, there was wooden benches in the room, and it almost seemed like somebody picked up and knocked over one of those benches. I mean, if I was going to say this is what it sounds like, that's kind of what it sounded like.
Mm.
Now, none of the benches had fallen over at the time. You know, everyone's butt was firmly planted on a bench. But that's almost what it sounded like to me.
So what did they keep in those casemates?
So Revolutionary War, it would have been just storage supplies, generally food stuff, because those casemates tend to stay rather cold. So they would have kept some perishable foodstuffs, probably some quartermaster supplies, things like that. Civil War, at one point, it was, like I said, it was civilian dissenters. And then, again, a few overflow of Confederate prisoners. Not so many Confederates. It was mostly civil dissenters in those smaller casemates. The Confederates mostly were stuck in casemate number 1. And then after that, it became storage again. A lot of storage for the last 100 years. They do also flood fairly easily because of the moat level and where the river is. So they did not keep people in there as a barracks.
Okay. So do you still get some flooding into the fort now?
Yeah, they don't call it Mud Island for nothing.
Oh.
Yeah, no, we are actually below sea level for 90% of the fort.
Wow.
And we are right on the edge of the river. So anytime there's not high tide so much, but anytime there's a massive rain or a big snowfall, you can almost guarantee that at least part of the casemates will be underwater. We get puddles everywhere. We actually had the Philadelphia Renaissance Fair at the fort over Mother's Day weekend. And the first day was unfortunately rained out. The second day, you had to jump over these giant pools of water to get from tent to tent. It was kind of fun. It added to the experience.
Oh, it was fun, huh?
I was having a great time. My daughter was having an awesome time. She was playing in the puddles.
Well,
but yeah,
we got a couple EVPs we want to get in here, and let me take a quick look at see which ones they are. There we go. Let's see. You got one that you have labeled "Don't Talk." Now, where did you catch this one at?
so this was captured in casemate number 11, the first time that I took a public tour down into the casemate. So you will hear a male voice. That is my investigator, Scott. And then sometimes, depending on how good your headphones are, you can hear me talking too. And we think that this one came up because I have a tendency when I lead those tours to talk too much. It's shocking, isn't it? Yeah, I have a tendency to, once I get there, to not let other people do EVP. I kind of grab it and go. So we think that they were telling me to shut up.
So let's see if we can hear that and see what it says.
Don't talk.
It was real quick. Don't talk.
Yeah.
I heard it. And what? That was the spirit that was saying that. What
Yeah. So the first thing you hear Scott say to something like, "Are you here?" or something like that. And that was kind of then the voice afterwards. So this recorder, if anyone's ever seen Case May 11 on TV, there's actually 2 ventilation windows where the guards would use to actually look into the cell so they didn't have to open the cell door. And the recorder was actually set on the ventilation window in the cell, and we had put it down and kind of stepped away from it, which is why Scott sounds like he's further away than the voice.
Now,
All right,
yeah,
I'll play
what
it.
kind of recorder are you using on this?
This probably would have been the Sony cheap one from Walmart.
Okay.
Oh, I know that one well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple Sonys. I have an Olympic. They're all pretty good.
So I don't use anything fancy, I'll be honest with you. I had an H2 for a while, and it got so irritating listening to all the noises ever that I stopped using it. I use the $35 one from Walmart, and it works fantastic, and I've used it for 15 years now.
Okay, I'll play this one more time for you. So listen again to it and see if you can, he'll be saying, "Don't talk."
Don't talk.
And did you ever try and find out what his name is?
Yeah, so that actually is William Howe. And we have been able to tie that into other EVPs. The voice is actually the same. So the Fort has a collection, a database of EVPs that people have collected in certain areas, and we've been able to tie that voice to many of the other ones in that space, and many of the ones that are associated with William Howe.
And it's interesting because you can tell the difference in the 2 voices there. His does have that metallic kind of reverberation to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this other one over here, son.
Yes.
Where was that one at?
So this is in the officers' apartment building, the officers' quarters, in the bottom, what used to be the museum room that's unfortunately now empty. But we had walked in, and there was nobody in the room. The room is completely empty. And shut the door, turned around, and you got this response. Now, just for reference, this was taken on a Wednesday morning, and the only people in the Fort, other than Scott and myself, was the people working in the office out in the parking lot.
Okay, so let's hear him holler for you. Over here, son.
Yeah. Now, we don't know what that voice is, so we haven't been able to track that voice to a specific person. And to be honest, that space does not get a lot of activity. So who that is, we don't know.
Wow.
But Scott, like I said, if you ever meet Scott, which I'm hoping he'll come to the event, but we haven't mentioned yet, but he is like an EVP magnet at Mifflin. If it was possible to be a ghost attractor, he would be it. You want to be friends with this guy if you want EVPs at Fort Mifflin.
All right. I'm going to play it again for you, so listen close. He almost had like a little accent too, didn't he?
Yeah, it definitely, and it's a different voice from the other one. You know, like there's definitely a distinctive voice to it. It sounds like he has a little bit of a twang to him.
Well, when I was there, we were in casemate 5, and we were all the way to the end sitting next to the wall. There was me and Beth Brown, who was my co-host at the time, and Dave Jones and one of the other guys, I think, who was a tour guide of the fort. And we were sitting there and hadn't been there for 5 minutes, and Beth said her batteries went dead on a recorder, so I put mine down between us. And, of course, I didn't hear anything, but see if you can hear what it picked up. And it's kind of low, and you'll hear some of us talking to start with. I did amp it up a little bit for where the spirit's talking, so maybe you'll be able to hear it. So let's see here. Listen to it and see. So that was them other two guys talking there at the end. But it said, Henry, help me. And when I heard that, how does something know what my name is? There at the, I've never been there before. And then it says, help me.
He just looks like a Henry.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I mean, it is possible they heard somebody call you by name earlier.
It's possible. Yeah. But it's funny, there's different places that I've been where I've had spirits say my name like that. So maybe I'm popular in the spirit world. I don't know.
And you're saying that they do follow people around the fort? They don't stay in just one area?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Some of them do. Some of them stay where they are, but for the most part, they tend to wander.
Probably love your accent.
Well, it's an interesting place to be. Of course, like I say, when I was there was all kinds of people, so you wasn't going to get a whole lot, I don't think, even because when the ghost hunters were there, there was even that many more people that was there. But speaking of events, why don't you tell us what's going to be going on?
Oh, yay. So we actually came up with a name, which is going to be fun.
Okay.
And I forgot what it was.
Okay.
It's that catchy.
It was. It went through several iterations, so I want to make sure I'm using the one that we finally decided on. All right, so September 16th at Fort Mifflin, we are going to be holding the coolest event ever, which is going to be not all the Para X, a lot of the Para X hosts, including Henry, myself, some of the guys from Strange Things Radio, and T. Fox Dunham from What Are You Afraid Of podcast. Also Eric B. from Dark Sun Rising. And we're going to have Horror at the Fort, the Philadelphia Ghost Fest. That's what we ended up deciding on the name.
Philadelphia Ghost Fest.
Yeah, so it's going to be awesome. So during the day, come out and meet all the hosts. We'll be hanging out during the day. The fort will be open. You can do some daytime investigating. We'll have some historic tours, all that kind of stuff. And then at the dinner hour, we're actually going to have a couple of local horror writers come out and do some short story readings, so get you in the mood for the ghost thing. And then from 8 to 2, we're actually going to open up the fort for nighttime investigations. And I believe, Henry, you are also doing a live broadcast, right? From the fort too. So there'll be a lot going on, and all for the low price of $45 a person, which is a lot for an all-day event. Or I'm sorry, it is not a lot for an all-day event. And it's a come-and-go thing, so you can kind of come for a little bit, go out and experience Philadelphia, come back later. You can pick and shoot. Oh, it's going to be awesome.
And how much interest have you gotten so far with all this?
Well, we just presented it now, so hopefully it'll all come pouring in.
So do people need to reserve ahead of time, or can they just show up?
You can show up. We are going to limit the nighttime investigation to only 40 people because, as we mentioned before, having too many people just kind of contaminates everything. So we are going to limit it. So I suggest if you would like to be part of the nighttime portion of the event, you call Fort Mifflin and call their office and get your ticket as soon as possible. If you would like to just come and hang out with us during the day, a lot of the horror writers are going to set up tables and sell some of their books. Henry will be there. You can come take pictures with Henry. What Are You Afraid Of podcast will be doing some recording during the day. I know we're going to do a few ghost tours and like some daytime investigating stuff. You can come for just the day portion as well. The day portion, I think, is going to be $10 if you're not sticking around for the after-hours stuff. So it's totally reasonable. It's totally awesome, and there's no reason why people will not be there.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. It's a real interesting place. It's very neat.
Just to be clear, because suddenly I'm hearing a la carte, is it $40? Everything's inclusive, or is it?
Yes, so it's
$10
$45.
a day, then add.
No, so it's $45 all day. So if you want to get there at 10 a.m. and stay until 2 a.m., $45. If you just want to come for the 10 to 4, which is like when the fort is open regular time frame, that would be $10.
Okay.
And then they kick you out.
And then they kick you out. And if you want to get tickets ahead of time, you would call the fort to do that. And I'm sure that you would have to have the right date, which would be September 16th.
Yes. Yep, and the fort, if you want to call, you can either go to fortmifflin.us and look up their number, or it's 215-685-4167, and you can talk to them at the fort there. And just make sure you mention the Para X, September 16th, Horror at the Fort, the Philadelphia Ghost Fest.
You say it's Horror at the Fort.
Horror at the Fort, yes. It's not other words that sound like horror. I had that problem earlier.
So that'd be interesting. People can come out, hang out with us, go around, do some investigating, and see the fort itself and the history. Very interesting place. You have a gift shop there where people can buy things?
Yeah, they do have a gift shop. You can buy all your cheesy merchandise, plus some books and other fun stuff, too. There is no restaurant or food on site, so if you are sticking around for most of the day, please plan to bring some kind of picnic lunch with you, or, you can always go out and grab something and come back.
Well, there's a hotel just down the street. I believe they have a cafeteria also.
If you're rich, I guess. You ever eaten inside a restaurant and hotel?
Yes, I eaten that one because that was the one I stayed in when I went to the Fort Mifflin.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but like I say, that was 2009, so I have no idea what prices and what the hotel is like now.
Sure, it's like 3 times that now.
So those hotels got fancy. They redid them all, made them all.
Oh, they did, huh?
We know Henry's coming back. Quick. Make it better. Make it more expensive.
Yes.
So we may be looking into getting a block of rooms at a discounted rate. Don't quote me on that yet, but if that happens, I will make sure to let everybody know.
Okay. And do you have, like, if you go to Fort Mifflin site, do they have, I would say, a list of hotels in the area?
I actually don't know if they do.
Okay.
But I can make them do that.
Well, that'd be interesting. People wants to come and
go to
place stay. Yeah.
Go to kayak.com or Travelocity or something.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much anywhere near the Philadelphia airport, you'll be close enough to the fort. The fort literally backs right up to the airport.
Yeah, it does. And
how close is it to like Valley Forge?
We are about 40 minutes from Valley Forge.
Oh, okay.
And you're what, about an hour and something from Gettysburg?
Yeah. Well, it depends who's driving. When I drive, we're an hour and 40 minutes. When Eric drives, we were 2 hours and a half.
Really?
Yeah, somebody went the wrong way and ended up in Maryland.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, Henry's never had that issue with people trying to get to Gettysburg events. Who was that? Was that?
That was Kat.
Tabby? Kat? Yeah.
Yeah,
she ended up like in Wisconsin or something.
No, we was going to meet one of our other friends there in Gettysburg, and she said, follow me, and she took all around the fort and still couldn't find where they were at. I mean, all around Gettysburg, couldn't find where they were at. Which made it funny. So we kid her about that all the time. Said, if you're going somewhere, do not follow Kat.
Or Eric B. from Dark Sun Rising.
Oh, Lord.
So Fort Mifflin on their site, if you go to the Plan Your Visit link on Fort Mifflin, there is a Trivago search engine there.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, how convenient.
There's a what
Search
now?
for hotels or Travaco.
It's a travel site.
Oh, okay. All right. Which will look up hotels for you.
Yep.
Okay.
Which is really nice.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
we didn't get to ask you, Rebecca, what got you into the paranormal.
And the fact you moved into a haunted house.
Okay, hold on. I didn't move us into a haunted house. My parents moved us into a haunted house.
Eric moved us into it.
No. All right, so I got into the paranormal. I'll be honest, my brother passed away when I was 12. And my mother kind of went into this need to talk to every psychic in the world phase because she wanted to talk to my brother. And as a 12-year-old, watching my mother do this, I was very confused. I was very, concerned, I guess, because I wasn't entirely sure what she was doing or that she was going about it the right way. Now, before my brother passed away, I had always been a very avid reader of ghost books, ghost stories, things like that, but I never really looked into the paranormal as a whole. Now, when like I said, when my mom started going on this kick, I started to do a little bit of digging. Now, the internet was still very young and very fresh and very new, so I had to go to the library and do digging that way. Found a lot of Hans Holzer's books, things like that, and looking into paranormal. When I was a teenager, I did the whole jumping the fence into the cemetery thing that you're not supposed to do. Don't ever do that. This is the disclaimer. Don't ever do that. But I did that.
Because their fences tend to be spiky.
Yes, and there's dead people on the other side that will kick your butt if you land on them.
Oh.
So it kind of bloomed from that whole wanting to understand kind of what my mother was looking for. And then I also discovered about that time that I'm actually clairaudient, which means that I hear spirit. So we actually moved, right after my brother passed away, we moved from one house to another. And the new house that we moved to was actually new construction, but it was built on an old apple orchard, which had been populated from the 1600s. And a few spirits actually were kind of starting to gravitate towards my mother because at that point, I think she's also partially sensitive or something, because she was putting out vibes and, talking to all these psychics and just dabbling in that world and drawing them to her. So when I say we moved into a haunted house, that's the haunted house we moved into. It was brand new construction, came free with ghost. So I grew up through high school learning to tune them out. And then when I got to college, I realized this was a thing that other people did, and that's kind of where it all started.
Yeah. So your team, how did that come about?
Well, I went to college. I actually joined another team that already existed. And then about 6 weeks into my joining that team, the person who was leading it decided she didn't want to do it anymore. So she handed it over to me, mostly because I was the only one who could, keep track of things. And I'm very organized. So apparently that was the only criteria for being in charge of this group. But I took it from her, and we kind of worked through college. And then when I graduated, I was fully intending on handing it over to somebody else to continue. And honestly, nobody wanted it. So when I moved to Philly, I just, quote, brought the team with me, per se. So we've been going strong ever since here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's interesting. I grew up in a house that was also, our family was the first people to live in it, and it had a couple of odd things taking place in it. I have no idea whether or not it was it was northern New Jersey, so it could have been, for all I know, an Indian burial ground. But it's interesting. You indicated being clairaudient. You hear spirits more than you see them. You mean?
Yeah, I very rarely actually see anything.
Okay, so you and I are in that same boat too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of my experiences have been auditory. I've either heard things in the distance. I had a ghost whisper the word "hey" so much in my ear that I literally thought my then girlfriend had just snuck up on me. And I just turned around until I realized, oh, I'm by myself in the kitchen, and there's anywhere where it could have gone. It was that close. And
I've definitely been there.
Got a question from the chat room from Sherry, and she wants to know if any spirits has followed you home from the fort?
Very good question. And no, actually, the fort spirits tend to be very loyal to the fort. I've had them follow me home from other places, but not from the fort. They tend to be extremely loyal. They know that their quote-unquote job is to protect and defend Fort Mifflin. And I have never heard of anyone leaving the fort and bringing anything home with them.
Now, you're part of the Taps family team, correct?
Yes, Spirit of PA became the Southeastern Pennsylvania representatives a couple years ago.
So is your team still really active? I mean, have you gotten more calls for investigations, or has it sort of slid?
It has died out dramatically in the last, I don't know, year and a half. We used to get, even before we joined TAP's team, like even before, we became affiliated with anybody, when it was just us and our little website on Google, we were getting probably 3 to 4 cases a month submitted. Now, we were actually investigating probably 1 or 2 a month because I am very stringent on weeding out kind of, not necessarily the crazy, but also the people that don't need an investigation, because I am very much of the belief that not everybody needs an investigation. I sometimes feel like investigating causes more problems than it can fix. So I'm very stringent on making sure that everything that I touch, I'm not going to make it worse. So I probably weed out about 40% of our cases just on the basis of they just need somebody to talk to. They need, some guidance or something. They don't need us to come barging in here with all our junk. Now, that was at the height of the ghost hunters, ghost adventures, ghost everything on TV was ghosts. Now, recently, as all these shows are starting to die off, unfortunately, that also means that having a ghost is no longer popular, which means that all of our cases are starting to die off, too. We are down to 1 or 2 every 3 months. It's bad. Now, there are some teams that are extremely busy, and I feel like I don't know their internal workings as well as, I probably should to comment on them, but I have a feeling that, number one, they either take everything that comes through the door, they don't do any kind of weeding out process, or they're paying to go to some of these sites, which is totally an acceptable thing. I just unfortunately don't believe in spending that kind of money every weekend to go somewhere.
Yeah, I don't either. We've been investigating a place not too far from where I live. It's a Preble County Historical Society, and we've gone there, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, and they just want us to keep coming back because we just kind of like talk to the ones that are there, and we're finding more and more out about the place. It used to be an old home. It's now the Historical Society, and the only thing that they did start with was would hear some like the front door open when there'd be nobody there, or some walking, on the floor, and they just wanted us to come out to find out who was there, and not try to get anything away because nothing seemed to be malicious or anything. So we've got quite a bit of stuff from it. So pretty interesting.
And sometimes that's the best way to do it, is to go to one site and do it again and again and again, because like I mentioned, the fort kind of building up a database of, voices and things, so we're able to track everything together. That's what people need to do, is realize you don't go to one site one time and then you're done. You need to go back multiple times. Can you repeat what happened to you? Can you, dig around? Are there any foxes that make screaming noises? These are things that people seem to forget, that's an important part of doing an investigation. It's not just going in there, getting your EVP and leaving. There's so much more to it. Yep,
sure is. Yeah, and I guess the first time that we were there, they had an upstairs that had 3 little rooms, and my son went up there because they told us that they had never heard anything or had anything happen upstairs. Well, he went upstairs and was up there maybe 15 minutes, and he come down and said, Dad, you guys got to go upstairs. Says, there's this little kid up there talking to me, and I hear him talking to me. So, we went up there, and they got some pretty good stuff. It was real soft, so you couldn't make a lot of it out. But one good one was when he come down to get us, he left his recorder up there. And you hear a little kid say, "Come back."
Aw.
So, but I mean, and it's just stuff like that. So, but it's real interesting. And they've come up with all kinds of history and found out more things. And it's led them to be able to dig deeper and find out more about who lived there and more information about them, I should say, because they already know who lived there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's real interesting, and I like doing it. It's a nice place.
Well, that's the good part about
It's
doing a investigation at a public place as opposed to private residences is that you can go back and not feel that you're intrusive, and everybody learns something from it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, real interesting. I'm looking forward to coming back to Fort Mifflin. Where are we going to be setting up at for I don't want to say meet and greet because but it's where we're going to be setting up people to come talk to us.
So I'm not entirely sure yet. We're still kind of plotting the logistics of that. The probability is that we will, depending if it's a nice day, we'll set people out on the parade ground so you can come say hi. You'll do the live broadcast, and we're going to do that from the officers' quarters because that's where the Wi-Fi is the strongest.
Good.
Well, I thought we were going to put the hosts in cages like zoos. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
That's what we do after.
Don't put things in her mind like that.
I like this plan. I'm good with this.
I'll make Barbara have to come out there.
You've been trying to bribe Barbara with every possible bribe.
I've tried, yes.
Well, I have been bribed
I just
with
can't.
pumpkin scones now, so it's
and blueberry. I heard.
How about orange scones?
Not into orange.
Oh, well.
Anyway.
Yes.
Rebecca, if everybody knows, is also responsible for the new ParaX Radio webpage.
Yay!
Yes. Very good job.
And it's not mine.
It's not finished, but it's looking really good. Very professional.
Mm-hmm. It works great.
Yeah, we're adding stuff to it every day, so suggestions are always welcome.
There is now there's going to be a frequently asked questions center.
It's there. It's under the contact menu. Frequently asked questions. So if you're having problems with your player, check there first. Some of our more common errors are there, so it's always fun. But next to the contact, you might notice a brand new button.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. ParaX is now selling T-shirts, mugs, all kinds of fun stuff. So if you feel the need to support your favorite station and pass the word out to the world, click that button and grab some good swag.
There's even baby clothes.
And there is even baby and dog, I think. No, we didn't put the dog stuff up there because it was weird looking.
We need to.
I'm working on it. One thing at a time. But no, everything that every dime that gets put into that will get put back into keeping the station running. We do keep the station free for you guys as listeners and for the hosts. And so in order to do that, we need to get some swag going. Yes. No, but we will be giving out some T-shirts and buttons and pins and things. So stay tuned to PowerX and listen to the commercials instead of going up for a potty break. Listen to the commercials and you might win.
And there's some really nice logos there, along with
there are
coffee mugs, buttons.
We used to do
now. Are you going to reestablish specific show pages? Because there used to be like. I haven't found them. They seem to have moved. For instance, the chat room page itself is now a different URL. I had to update pages because it used to say live and now it says chat or something.
Well, yeah, you have to go to ParaXRadioNetwork.com, and then from there you can navigate to everything. The old site's completely gone. So.
Yeah.
And it has the show schedules, show archives. your shows, well, even if you go down here to below, you can still go to the Paranormal View, which will take you to our page.
Yep, and all the shows, if you're looking for something new to do, you can actually, under the show link, things are sorted by category, so you can find shows by category. The show archive links are back up, so you can find those as well. And the entire site is mobile friendly. So if you're traveling and you want to show everybody the awesomeness that is ParaX,
my phone doesn't like the XAT chat.
It does not like, yes, so the chat, and occasionally, depending on who your mobile server is, sometimes it doesn't play the stream, but the chat is not mobile friendly, unfortunately.
Well, I was able to listen to the show at least when I was in London years ago working on a movie by using the TuneIn app.
Yes.
That at least was able to access ParaX. So I was able to listen to the show live, and I don't remember if I was texting or emailing the show saying, I'm listening, I'm in London, but, you know.
Yeah, TuneIn still
1 a.m.
works.
Yes, you can still access the shows via TuneIn, but the actual site itself is mobile friendly, and you should be able to stream. If you're on Wi-Fi, you should be able to get the actual player to work on phones and tablets.
That have flash, yeah.
And we do have lots of new shows that has been added.
Absolutely. We are adding new shows all the time. Actually, this evening at midnight Eastern, a brand new show is debuting. It is a once-a-month horror drama, which is entirely fictional stories written and produced by Mark Slade and performed by professional actors. So think kind of War of the Worlds teleplay.
Where are they located? Not that I'm a professional actor or anything.
I believe that they film out, or they record out of Eastern Pennsylvania. I'm not entirely sure where.
So we are adding some new shows also from the West Coast. Or do we have any of those yet?
I don't know. West Coast.
Yes, I don't know of any West Coast ones, but we do have Mac Maloney's new show, which is on Sundays. That's Military X-Files. We have The Gathering, just became a weekly show. So those ladies who used to take over from The Calling once a month now have their own show. We have Dr. Kelly Schutz's Paranormal Encounters podcast. So she just started recently as well. So we're always adding new shows, always. And if you ever want to try and host on ParaX, all you have to do is go to our ParaX Facebook page and submit an application via the link there.
Very good. We got things working great then, don't we?
We're trying.
You know,
every
Rebecca,
day, step by step.
The Paranormal View, all one word, has its own account on Facebook, so you're welcome to come like our page, as well as the listeners can come like our page.
Yep.
Because not only do we promote, obviously, the show, but I'm the main admin on that, and if I find really weird articles, both paranormal, creepy, scary, or just sciencey, I'll post the links to those articles.
Yeah, because Rebecca, when she's on Dark Sun or Blue Topaz, is known as the list lady.
Do I know? I'm not the. No, I'm Princess Sparkle Pants.
Sparkle Fluffy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So one of the ongoing jokes on Through Blue Topaz, for some reason, is I never actually introduced myself on air for the longest time. So the listeners in the chat room just started naming me. And they've gone through some pretty interesting ones, but I think the latest one was, Princess Fluffy McSparkle Pants or something like that. Yep.
Boy.
You give the listeners an inch and they take so far.
Well, our time has just run right on through, and I want to thank Rebecca for taking the time to come and talk about Fort Mifflin and announcing that we are going to have our own horror thing at Fort Mifflin with the
horror thing.
ParaX. With ParaX, yeah. So
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, you're very welcome. And, we, again, want to thank you. And if you want to stay on for a few minutes after we're off, that's fine. Why don't you give out your stuff where people can reach you and when your show is.
Sure. So I host the Shadows Radio on Mondays, 9 p.m. Eastern. You can go to theshadowsradio.com for all that information. I also host Through Blue Topaz Mondays at 11 p.m. Eastern. We don't have a website because that show's very under the radar, but it's a lot of fun. And then you can also find my paranormal team, Spirit of PA. It's SPIRT, only one I because we can't spell, of PA.com, and you can find us there.
All right.
And fortmifflin.us.
Fortmifflin.us. There you go. Jeff?
Yeah, go to theparanormalview.com, and you have all kinds of links. And like I say, we're on Facebook, The Paranormal View, all one word, and there you go.
All right. With that, this is Henry Foister.
Jeffrey Gould.
And we will see you next week at the same time. And we have Nick Redfern, Roswell UFO Conspiracy. So till then, good night, everybody. Have a great 4th of July.